Hello, this is the video for the top-down movement and animation lesson that we did in class. So if for whatever reason you need to review what we talked about, that's why I'm doing this, because I know it could be a lot to at once. So getting right into it, on Canvas at the top of the modules page, you'll see the class assets folder, which has a bunch of just royalty-free, no copyright assets that I found online. This one, we're just going to need a sprite. You can use whatever sprite you want to use, something you made, something you found on the internet yourself. For this one, we're going to go to assets, top down, and then characters top down. If you want to use the same one that I'm using, I'm going to use the ones that I made. These goblins down here, I already have them downloaded, but yeah, if you see these on the asset store, it's because I put them there. But yes, they're a little bit, everything else is way more simple. But so these ones might be a good example. So anyways, in the Unity Hub, if you haven't made a project yet, you would go to New Project, select Universal 2D because it's the other ones are deprecated, so they're no longer supported. Give it a name, save it somewhere that you will remember. Select the organization and select Create Project. I just did that because takes a long time to load, and then just open it up from here. So my project is Hero's Journey. So I have right here. So this is a brand new project. Haven't even looked, haven't done anything in it. So now we're just going to go through what we talked about in class. And I also have the documentation for this, by the way. So if I do things a little bit differently or in a different order than the documentation, don't worry. We're still doing the exact same thing that we're doing in the documentation. So the first thing I'm going to do is right-click, create folder, sprites. Start being organized from the very beginning. Then in the sprites folder, I'm going to right-click, create folder, player, sprites, because that's just going to help it with. It's a good habit to form when you're trying to make projects scalable. And then I'm going to make another folder called tile sprites. I guess. And then in the player sprites folder, I'm going to go to my downloads folder and drag in those goblin sprites that I downloaded from the class assets folder. So the first step is going to be to split these into, or I guess slice them into individual sprites that we can use for animations and for our player and whatnot. So with it selected in what's called the project browser, I'm going to make sure the texture type is set to sprite 2D and UI, which it is. Set the sprite mode to from single to multiple because we want multiple sprites. Pixels per unit. This one, you can most of the time just use the resolution of your sprite sheet. So this sprite sheet is 64 by 64. Sometimes you can tell just by looking at it. Most of the other class assets are like 32 by 32 or 16 by 16. It actually doesn't really matter that much if you get this wrong. If you get this wrong, it might just make your sprite a lot bigger. So when you play the game, and if your sprite's a lot bigger than the tiles, then you probably just need to increase the size of this. Basically, the bigger this number is, the smaller this sprite's going to be. And then set the filter mode from bilinear to point no filter because it's pixel art. It's going to be blurry. You want it to be sharp, so point no filter. Then same reason for compression. Set that to none. Then make sure to hit apply, or else none of those changes are going to work. So I'll do that again for these other sprites. Multiple PPU, multiple sprite mode, 64 PPU. Filter mode is point, and compression is none. Those 4 settings are going to be used a lot with pixel art. Then I'm going to hit this sprite editor button here. And this is where we're actually going to slice it. So if your window is small, I recommend making it big so you can see what you're doing. In the top left, the slice drop down, switch from automatic to grid by cell size. You can see because this is a well-made sprite sheet because I made it. It is already naturally, if you see the sprites fit into these red boxes perfectly because I set the pixel size to 64 by 64. I set to like something like 32 by 32. It then becomes like a 4 by 4 grid. So basically the goal here is to fit each sprite in a red box. So if you have like the red lines going on top of the sprites or anything, just drag your mouse over the X or the Y until it looks pretty close. And then if it's a well-made sprite sheet, it should be something like 60 by 16, 32 by 32, 48 by 48. I think a lot of the other class asset sprite sheets are actually 72 by 72 for some reason. But you know, free assets are kind of weird. And then make sure you hit the slice button when you're done with that, and then hit apply. I guess I might as well do that for the other sprite sheet that I have here. And then after you do that, if you look at your sprites in the project browser, you should have this arrow here that you can click and you can see all of your open sprites. So I'm going to drag this sprite of him looking down into the scene. And that's going to become the player later. So I'm going to rename it in the hierarchy to player. And we'll get right into making some animations for him. So I'm going to create a new folder in the assets folder, right click, create folder, call it animations. First thing I want to do is create an animation controller. So I can right click, create, and create an animation controller, or I can just create a regular animation right away. I'll call this one idle down. Check is looping in the inspector or loop time in the inspector. And then if I drag this animation onto my player, then it's automatically going to create this controller. That's what this object is in the project browser. Animator controller is basically what you place on your object, and that's going to hold all of the animation. So it looks like this. You see we have this idle down animation. I'm going to name this AC underscore player animator controller underscore player controller, I guess. Adopting the Unreal Engine naming convention where the initials of the... Anyways, we won't get into that here. So maybe I'll name this A underscore for animation. All right, now let's make the other animations that we're going to need. So this is a top-down game. You'll need idle left, idle right, and idle up. And then you're also going to need walk in all 4 directions. All right, now instead of just throwing all of these animations onto our animator controller, by the way, I'm going to click anywhere in the animator controller. This is the base layer. I'm going to go to the inspector and rename it player base layer. Because I found once you have a bunch of objects with a bunch of different animators, it's hard to know exactly which animator controller you have open. So now we always know that the player controller is open. Let's create a blend tree, which is going to be a way of organizing our animations and switching between all of our idle animations in one blend tree versus our walk animations in another blend tree. You might have attacking animations later. You'd have an attack blend tree that has the attacks in every direction that they can attack in. So I'm going to right click in an empty space in the animator controller, create states, and from new blend tree. I'm going to click on that blend tree that I just made and rename it to BT for blend tree underscore idle. And then I'm going to right click it and set as layer default state. And this is where we're going to hold our animations in a second. So I'm going to actually delete idle down from here. Let's, before we get into that, if you, by the way, if you don't see this animator open, this animator window, if it closes for whatever reason, you can go to window, animation, and open the animator from there. Or you can click on your player and open the animator controller by double clicking here. Or you can double click it in the project browser to open it. Several ways to open it. I'm going to go to the parameters tab. So by default, you're in the layers tab, switch to parameters, and we're going to add 3 parameters. We're going to add a bool is walking, and it must be spelled the exact same way here. So lowercase I, uppercase W, no space, is walking. And that's a bool, which is a true or false value. So this could be checked or it could be unchecked. Click the plus button again. We're going to float, which is basically just a decimal value, just a number. This one is going to be called move x, lowercase m, uppercase x, no space. And then another float called move y, lowercase m, uppercase y, no space. And that's because that's how we are going to refer to it in the script later. We'll show in just a second. The script can only reference it if it's spelled the exact same way. So when you start writing your own scripts, you can spell things however you want, as long as it is consistent everywhere that it is, right? So I'm going to click on my blend tree. I'm going to double click it rather. After I double click it, open up to this. I'm going to click on this node in the middle. And then you can see once you have it selected, its details in the inspector. I'm going to switch the blend type drop down from 1D to 2D simple directional. And then you'll see in the parameters, you'll see these two drop downs. I'm going to switch the first one to move X and the second one to move Y. It looks like this. And then in the motion panel, I'm going to hit this plus button and add a motion field. And I'm going to do that 4 times for each direction that we're going to look in. So this is where we're going to store our animations. So this is idle blend tree. I'm just going to throw each of my idle animations into these things. So I'm going to do down, up, left, and right. So now we need to give it some parameters. So in the script later, we're going to take these parameters that we put here, and that's what's going to tell it what animation to play. So if we're looking down, so if you think Y is up and down and X is left and right, vertical versus horizontal, you want to think about it that way. So if I'm looking down, I'm going down on the vertical, down on the Y axis. Down should be negative. So Y is going to be -1 or -0.1. The smaller it is, the more sensitive is going to be. So if you're like on a controller, you might get like decimals. If I'm looking up, then Y should be positive. So Y is going to be positive 0.1 or just like 0.1. X will be 0. If I'm looking left, then that means I'm looking, negative on the X axis, right? So that would, for the X position, that would be -0.1. And then if I'm looking right, that would be positive on the X axis. So that would be 0.1. And then 0.1 on the position X and 0 on the Y. Hopefully I did that right. I mess that up all the time, so. But, you can kind of see with this glow if it's going in the right direction. Then you could it would be the same kind of deal for doing the diagonals, except I'll do that later. Right now, we'll just keep it simple with 4 directions. So now that we did all of that, on your animator window, you can click the player base layer to go back to the base layer and just single click your blend tree and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. We're going to turn this into the blend tree for our walking animations. We're going to rename it to BT_walk. Double click to open it, and then just replace all of these idle animations with our walk animations. But make sure you keep them like up goes to up, down goes to down, idle left goes to walk left, idle right goes to walk right. Unless you want to redo those numbers. So that's looking good. Our blend tree is all set up, theoretically. Well, one more thing we have to do is create the transitions, which is going to be how we decide the conditions in which we switch between these states. So let's right click on the BT idle, make transition, then click on the BT walk. So it should create an arrow pointing towards the walk. And we also want to make a transition going the other way. So right click, make transition, so there should be an arrow going to and from each other. To edit the conditions, you just click on the arrow. You'll see in the inspector, there's a little settings triangle. Click it to open up all of the settings so you see it like this. And then we have to change some of these things. So first of all, no exit time. because this is a 2D animation, it's not like a 3D animation. There's no smooth blending between animations or anything. Everything is just like instant, right? No exit time, no duration time. So fix the transition duration, drag that to 0. Because like we said, everything is just happening snappy. And then finally, in the conditions at the very bottom, click the plus button. So because this is going from idle to walk, the condition for that should be is walking is false. If we're not walking, or excuse me, sorry, is walking is true. If we're walking, we want to play the walking animations. Then click on the other arrow that's pointing towards idle. No exit time, no transition duration time. The condition should be is walking is false. Gonna go ahead and save everything. Make sure that you are saving often as well. What's next? Now we can create the animation. So these animations don't actually have anything on them. So you can either double click on the animations in your project browser or just hit Control-6 to open up the animation window, or you can go to Window Animation here. And then make sure you click on your player after you open up this window, because we're about to drag these frames onto the timeline. But what happens pretty much every time is you're going to try to drag a frame onto the timeline and it's not going to let you. And that's just because you have to select your player. So you have to remember that. Always select the player. The samples window is the frame rate. So how fast the animation is playing. If you don't see the samples window in your animation window right here, then you just have to click on these 3 dots on the right and click show sample rate. And then it'll pop up. You probably want to set that as something like 8. 60 is way too much. And this drop down is how you change which animation you're editing. So it's very easy. If I want to create my idle down, then I just have to drag my idle down sprites. So click the first one, press shift, click the last one, as shift selects them all, and then drag them onto your timeline. That's it, the animation is made. Make sure you're dragging them onto the timeline. You're not dragging them onto this left panel. You're not adding any properties or anything. You're just dragging the frames onto the timeline. If you drag them here, it might create an animation event. So if you see this little white triangle anywhere, then you created an animation event. You don't want to do that. So if you see that white triangle, click it and delete it. Because if you have empty animation events, it's going to throw some errors every once in a while. So looking left, that's make sure you're choosing the one that's looking towards the left, and then shift select them all. Do the same thing. Set the sample rate to something smaller like 8. And then you just do that for all of the animations. Idle up is when he's looking, his back is facing the player. Oh, luckily I did them all in the perfect order. Left. All right. Last one, walking up. All right, our animations are made. Our animations are attached to the player. Now I'm going to make a folder, and in the assets folder, and call it scripts. And there are a couple of scripts that we're about to make that we can actually have control over this player. I'm going to right click, create C# script, and call it player controller. Must be spelled capital P, capital C, no space. Very important. If you misspell it, then delete it. You want to delete the cache too, honestly. So I would right click it, show and explorer, and then delete both of these folders. Like you'll see the script and then you'll see the meta file for it. That's if you misspell it. And then create another script and call it camera controller. capital C, no space. Then it should compile. The reason we do that, well, first I guess I can show it. When you double click to open it up, you'll see the public class line at the top. The name of the file must match the name of this class file here. And because we will be copying pasting scripts over all of this, the scripts that we're going to paste have this name. And if they don't match, then you're going to get errors and it might mess up stuff. So scripts are all in the same top-down class assets, except you just go to asset scripts, top-down scripts, and part 1. So that's what we're doing. Double click to open it, click anywhere in it, press Control A, Control C to copy, Control A to select all, then Control C to copy. Then back in Visual Studio, click somewhere, press Control A to select all, and Control V to paste over everything. You must absolutely not add this in addition to the code that's there. You must paste it over the code that's there, because then you don't want duplicate using statements. You don't want duplicate classes all in the same script and stuff like that. Control S to save, and then back to Unity. It's compiling. Let's open the camera controller and let's just paste that in, and then I'll explain what we're actually doing. So I guess we're not doing the camera controller yet, but we just made this script. So at the top, this is where we are getting the references for all of the variables that we're going to use. Our animator, well, actually, I'll show where we are using that. In awake, so this is called before the game starts. We get a reference to the rigid body that's on our player. We don't have that yet, and the animator, if the instance is null, which means if the instance does not exist, then it's this. This is making sure that when we reference this player in other scripts, that it's referencing the correct one. That we only have one player, so we're not gonna have like multiple instances of the same player. So if we have one that's already there, then we're not going to make this one the official instance. Or rather, because of this else statement, if we have one that's already there, then we're going to destroy this one. So it confirms that we only have one. But this, we don't have to get so far into programming at this stage. In fix update, it's being called every frame. We're calling this method. A method is just a group of code. You see all these little brackets here. So everything in these purple brackets make up the move character method. Get access raw is just a default Unity method that we're getting from one of these using statements at the top. So these give us some default methods. We're getting the horizontal and the vertical axis. If is idle, then our rigid body is 0. So this is how we can tell if we're not moving, and this is how we set the is walking to false. Basically, it's just detecting if the rigid body component that's going to be on us in a second, if that's moving or not. And then if we're moving, then is walking is true. And it's setting these move X and move Y parameters that we made on our animator. It is setting those in relation to the direction that we're moving in. So this is how we're setting the animations, basically. You don't have to worry about that too much. Well, I guess depending on whatever class we're doing this in. Okay. So that's all good and dandy, but we have not actually added that to our player yet, so it's not doing anything. Make sure that you Control S save on this, or else the changes aren't going to take effect. So you can either drag this onto the player, or you can select your player and then press Add Component in the Inspector tab and add the player controller from there. If you don't see it, then you did something wrong, or there's some kind of error in your scripts. I would just literally delete everything, or just Control A and Control V the script on top of it again, the entire script. And we see this move speed public variable. Set that to something like 5. And let's see if I can move. No, I'm getting an error because even though I just said it, I already forgot. We need to add the rigid body component. So add component, rigid body, which is how Unity deals with gravity and physics, rather. So make sure, because it's a 2D game, you have to select the rigid body 2D, not the regular rigid body. Absolutely must be the 2D. All right, so now we are actually giving the game something to reference. I'm falling down a little bit. But because it's a top-down game and not a platformer or side-scroller, we can set the gravity scale to 0 on the rigid body 2D component. There you go. It is perfectly moving. The animation looks perfect. The movement is perfect. That's it. All right, so that's everything that we need to know. A couple of cool extra things that might be handy to know are right now the camera is kind of far away. We're going to do mostly camera stuff in the next video, but if you want to make it zoomed up a little bit, just select the main camera in the hierarchy, go to the inspector tab, change it to something smaller. And you can see it's a little bit closer. And then another thing that's definitely not 100% necessary, but let's say you made diagonal animations, or you have a sprite that has diagonal animations and you want to make it an 8D sprite, then you can do that basically doing the same stuff that we already did. So you just open the animator for your player and then right click on one of the blend trees. I guess we'll start with the idle, and then click on the blend tree. So it's glowing blue. And then the same way we made these 4 motion fields, you make 4 additional ones. I already did it, but you just hit this plus button, add a motion field. And then we're just gonna plug in our diagonal idle animations there. So I duplicated my idle animations and then I just named them idle DL for like down left, down right, UL, up left, up right, up right, yeah. And then you do the same thing for the walking animations. So once you duplicated them, you double click to open them, down left, click on my player. We've got to remember to click on your player after you open the animation window. Find the, I have to drag them into the blend tree first. Remember to drag your new diagonal animations into the blend tree. And I guess we'll go over my least favorite part, which is so if I'm going down left, that's down and that's also left. So that would be a double negative, right? So that'd be negative 0.1 both in the position X and negative 0.1 in the position Y. And then you can see it's kind of glowing in the direction that I want to face, right? Then down right would be negative on the Y, negative 0.1. Accidentally stopped recording there, but down right would be negative on the Y, negative 0.1. And positive on the X, because looking right is positive on the X. I'll just do this on camera for the idle, just in case anybody's struggling with this. Upper left, X would be negative, and Y would be positive. Anything up is going to be positive on the Y. And upper right is also positive on the X. That's what it looks like. And you can see when it looks good, all of these dots will make a square like that. Okay, and then you could do it however you want with the walking. You could like duplicate that one and just redo your entire walk. I'm not going to redo my walk. I'm just going to create my diagonal walking animations and repeat the same steps that I just did for the idle animations, except with the walking animations. So I'm going to cut that out of the video and leave that to everybody to do individually. All right, the walking blend tree looks like this. And then I'm just going to open up the animation window, make sure I click on my player. Absolutely make sure you do that. And then I'm just going to go through and set them. So I guess I'll start with idle DR. Go to my player sprites folder, open up the diagonal sprites of the goblin. I think the goblin is the only one that has the diagonal animations. First one, he's looking down and to the right, idle. There should be 8 sprites, and then you just drag them on top of the other 8 sprites because I duplicated them, so they already have sprites. All you have to do is drag them on top of the sprites to override them. Looks like the next one is down left. So idle down left, click, shift, select the last one. And then it's going upper right. So that's my UR. Drag over there. Then upper left. And just like that, the idle animations are done. So then walking down right looks like is next. So walk DR. Then walking upper right is next. So down UR. Down left. DL. And up left. Up left. I think that's it. Let's see if that is working. Oh, awesome. It's working. Now you can run diagonally. So that's pretty cool. So that's it for now. Next, we'll do get the camera to follow the player and get some tile maps so it starts to look like an actual game.